Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. This is a segment that we call Huge as Fuck. This has been an ongoing segment that we've done through the Advices Radio audio programming. Now we've moved to Think Big Bodybuilding Media here on YouTube. We are continuing the program here. And to kick us off, first installment of Huge as Fuck, we've got Gary Turner. What's up, man? How you been, brother?
What's up? How you doing?
Dude, I just saw you over at the Olympia, and you legitimately fit the bill as huge as fuck. What are you weighing right now, man?
You saw me. I remember telling you I was 292, and I'm still around there, about 290, 292. I actually dried out a lot in the desert. I got on the scale, and I got on the scale, it was a couple pounds down, and I think it's as much as you're trying to hydrate there, I think you're burning through water. You don't even realize it. That's why they like. I actually was speaking to a few people. I'm like, maybe some of these guys mess up their diuretic protocols at the Olympia. They don't come in the right way because they're not from a climate like that. And they maybe were dry wherever they're from. They come there, they do a diazide or whatever they're doing for their diuretic protocol, and then like screw it up. So
Yeah.
I tried to maintain as much as I can. I tried to increase water while I was there. But yeah, I'm about 290 right now.
Yeah, I actually had heard that was one of the reasons back. Remember, like Kai came out there like super early, like weeks and weeks early. I heard that was one of the reasons he did that back in the day. Well, I say back in the day, it was just a few years ago now. That he wanted to get adjusted to that climate, which it does change, man. Your skin gets so dry, you can feel it, and your lips start chapping real quick. Yeah,
you can actually feel like the snot in your nose harden up. And like, geez, man, like pulling boogers out and shit. But yeah, it's definitely it's a unique climate. But from a bodybuilding perspective, I never believed you can lose that much water. Everybody's like, make sure you hydrate. I'm like, dude, I drink 2 gallons of water a day. Like I had to increase that because I'm looking at the scale. I'm like, it's going down. I'm eating the same exact food that I was eating, normally at home and stuff like that. I'm like, why is the scale going down?
Yeah.
I mean, it's water weight. It's not like I'm losing muscle or anything like that. It's just, it probably made me look better when I was there
right.
to lose that little bit of water weight.
But yeah, no, at the same time though, I mean, if you were getting on stage, I could see how that would make a difference. So 292, man, that's a lot of freaking weight. And I'm 5'7". You can't be more than an inch taller than me, like 5'8" maybe.
Yeah. 5'8". Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was 5'9" for a while, but then I talked to a few 5'9" people and they still were a little taller than me. So but bodybuilding is one of those sports where height, you kind of want it to be down a little bit because it makes your weight look more impressive. If you're 6'6" and you're 300 pounds, that's not that impressive. Yeah. You're supposed to be that weight. Yeah. That's kind of like an average weight for a guy who's 6'6" with a decent amount of muscle on him. But like when you're like some of these guys are 5'6", 275, that's crazy stuff. So it's kind of it's different than like other sports where it's like this guy's a monster, he's 6'5", 275, like football or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind when I shrunk an inch.
Well, listen, no, absolutely. This is like one of the few sports where being shorter at the same weight is beneficial. So what's it like walking around carrying this amount of weight? First of all, have you been up to this high before? You're about to break 300. You think it's going to happen, by the way, in this offseason? You think you're going to break that 300 mark?
Yeah, and back in the day, I used to be a perma bulker. So anybody who really knows me from like the early 2014 time when I first started with Animal. I was a perma bulker. I bulked into the 290s, but it was like really bad. Yeah. It was like complete gut, no veins, completely force-fed on like a diet that, pasta, 80% ground beef multiple times a day.
Yeah.
I was taking insulin when I wasn't supposed to. It was a lot of body fat. It wasn't just water. And it was like, and my muscles actually, like my tissue wasn't that big at the time. So I was really just forcing on kind of chasing the scale. This time around, and after that, I met Matt Porter, who was my coach from 2015 up until his death, recent death. So we did the last prep we did was 2018.
Okay.
Matt kind of taught me how to eat. But Matt was a neurotic guy with his diet. So I stayed lean for a long time. There was off seasons where I was 235, which
no kidding.
was a little counterproductive because it was a much easier prep going in those next years, but I didn't add a lot of tissue on. I wasn't a lot stronger. And as the years went on, I added a little bit more, but still kept it around 250. I think 258 was probably the highest that I went to all right condition. Like I was still like, not stage ready or anything like that, or it was acceptable off-season condition. And then I kind of did my own thing after the 2018 Junior Nationals with the off-season. And my buddy, I was just checking my blood sugar one day, and it was kind of high for fasted. I was more of a lower fat, higher carb person at that time. And my buddy, I think my blood sugar was like 118 fasted. So it wasn't crazy, but it was not nice. Yeah. And he goes, listen, this is unacceptable. You can't be doing this. Why don't you try a diet that I write? If I write it, are you going to do it? I said, listen, I have nothing to lose. I have 18 months of off season. I knew I wasn't going to be competing till next year. I gave him a shot. And he was more a proponent of higher healthy fats, carbs only when you need them, so on the lower to moderate side, and higher protein. Okay. And all of a sudden, everything just started taking off. Okay. 1 month, 2 months, and it was, it was very, the amount of fats that we worked up to was a very liberal amount per meal. Like we're talking like maybe 30 grams of fat per meal on certain meals. Certain meals didn't have any carbs in them to give the pancreas a break. Yeah. So it just kept going, and the amount of fat that he told me to, and I trusted him, it just kept blowing up. The other thing I noticed is I got strong as hell. This is absolutely the strongest that I've ever been. Yesterday I benched the 130 dumbbells for 20. I did the 150s for 12. I've never even looked at those weights before. Like a high set for me back in the day was 110 for a couple. I just wasn't like a big progressive overload guy, and I also started implementing like a top set, not quite like a Dorian split. It wasn't as much like that, but I would say, okay, this is the top set. You're going to go all out, to failure on this. And I started doing that. So it allowed me, that sort of diet with the fats allowed me to train at a much higher intensity.
No kidding.
I pulled back the volume a bit. So that kind of, that also helped start the recovery process quicker, rather than me being in the gym doing all kinds of fluff work for 2 hours. Yeah. And, multiple, 5 6 times a week. Everything kind of came together as a perfect storm. So it was a really progressive off season so far. I still have another 6 months about of off season.
Nice. So how long do you spend in the gym now? You said you were, and you mentioned that a little bit. We talked a little bit before we started here that you were doing, you weren't as focused on progressive overload. You were doing endless sets, super high volume. You were training 6, maybe even 7 times per week. How many times are you in the gym now? And how often? Okay.
4 times a week. I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday.
Okay.
So a lot of that is combined. Like Monday's leg day, that's the entire leg. So I do quads, hamstrings. But I learned how, just to use that for example, I learned how to pick the most important exercises. You don't have to do everything. Whereas I used to feel like, well, don't neglect everything. Whereas, say for hamstrings, I'll pick a seated hamstring or a lying hamstring, one or the other, couple it with an RDL, where I'll overload the RDL, and then I'll do one big glute motion, maybe glute bridge, where, I can overload that, working up to a heavy glute bridge at the top, or I like a landmine squat, which is kind of almost like a goblet squat. It hits the glutes real nice. So I kind of figured out don't do everything, pick the most important things, see what works. And if it doesn't work, there's nothing that says that you have to do that. I haven't squatted in forever. And for the longest time, I've listened to the purists, the powerlifting purists, that say you have to squat for big legs. And I've always had notoriously small legs. They've always been behind my upper body. And I just never really got that much out of squatting. I don't have the flexibility. I don't know if you know Paul Carter.
Sure,
Paul yelled at Paul. I discovered the hack squat really killed my quads, and I really focused on that as a main movement. Yeah. And Paul kind of said to me, he goes, of course, I've been telling you that for years. He goes, you have long femurs. Yeah. It doesn't make sense, ergonomically for you to squat. He goes, you're going to feel in your lower back, maybe your glutes a little bit more, but it's not going to build your quads. He goes, you now found the hack squat, and that's the reason why my quads have really come up this offseason. I'm really excited to see what they look like at the end compared to pretty much anything else.
That's pretty awesome, man. So legs are
Yeah.
something you've really been focusing on. You've been using a lot
Hmm.
more fats now this particular
Hmm.
year.
Yeah.
And then I take it because you said you may keep carbs away from areas you don't need them. So we're talking like nutrient timing. So you're getting carbs, what, like around your
Absolutely.
workouts then, or how does that work?
I do it. I do it often, but they're only as needed. You know, you got guys that they're taking post workout carbs, 100 grams, 200 grams,
Yeah.
or pre workout. I kind of build up the whole time. When I say like some meals, like I have a shake for meal two, that's just peanut butter and whey isolate. It's
Okay.
so there's no carbs. I don't aimlessly put carbs in there. I have two meals that are chicken, olive oil, and 1.5 cups of rice. So it's not like I just aimlessly put 2 cups of rice in there. That's where we've worked up to that. So the amount of carbs per meal is right now it's about 60 grams. A few of the ones, you know, the cup and a half of rice is I believe 75 grams. Those are the highest carb spikes that I'll have all day. Even pre-workout, I just take waxy maize. I take waxy maize, which is 45 grams. I don't take more than that. I don't really believe that 1 hour before the workout is going to like all of a sudden, you know, explode you. We've been filled with glycogen every day for every meal. It's not like, unless you're like in a huge caloric deficit, you know, away from that, a pre-workout meal, I don't believe it's just going to like miraculously explode everything. We always see Chris Aceto give, you know, the muffins to everybody. There's that's been all led up to give that athlete a muffin. It's not just like, well, today's leg day, go have a muffin.
Yeah.
That's how I used to think in 2014. I used to say, well, let's have 2 donuts because it's leg day. That's not the way to go.
Okay.
That's not how you build muscle.
Okay.
So it was just a little bit more of a strategic approach. I'm not as obsessed with my weight, even though it's higher.
Yeah.
So like you asked, like, do you think I'll hit 300? I do. I'm going to be pulling back soon for about 8 weeks into a cruise,
Okay.
probably till about Thanksgiving, and then I'll jack it back up. And at that time, I probably will cross over into that. But the scale is just a tool for me now. I'm a little bit more mature in terms of bodybuilding. That it's not like if you're 295, you're not big, but if you're 300, you're big. It's just a number.
Yeah.
I always compare the. You know how like somebody could buy a really expensive house. The mortgage payment is through the roof, and all your friends come over and see the house and go, ooh, but they really don't care. You're the one that's going to get stuck with the mortgage payment at the end. So in reality, that's what like being like an astronomical amount of weight is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like everyone's going to, he's 300, he's 310, but in reality, you're the one that's got to live with it. They're going to go home at the end of the day. If you're too fat, you're going to have to deal with that. If you have health issues, you're going to have to deal with that. So nobody really cares, and it's not. I really don't believe anybody can really tell. You're either big or you're not.
So talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about, being a really heavyweight. I've heard guys who talk about discomfort. I mean, I know for me, I think everybody's different. I know for me, I've always been a person. I started out lifting at a very, very light body weight. And so for me, even getting up to like 200 pounds, I put on like 70 pounds. And I know that when I get to 220, 225, it's like, I know I'm very uncomfortable. I couldn't fathom being, closer to 300 pounds. Is that something that you felt like you could do from the beginning? Did you have it in your head? Were you able to visualize that one day I'm going to be, 290?
Yeah. The reason why is I started at like 130 pounds. I was like 2006. I started lifting. Okay. I kind of dieted down. I was about at 170 when I started, but I was like chunky.
Okay.
So I guess I dropped the fat and I went down to like 130. My mom was like, "You got to start building up because you're too skinny."
Yeah.
So I started from there. However, I like followed Jay Cutler like in his prime, like around the 2006-7 time, and I'm like, that's what I want to look like and everything like that. Who knows if I'll ever get there? But it was all progressive through the years. I mean, you see like this result now, but I remember my first prep. I started a very fat 245. I mean, like gut. It was very forced 245, and then I died it down to 181 for my first show.
Yeah.
So those weights on what you can handle, like I was huffing and puffing at 245.
Okay.
And then there was years that I started, I believe that it's kind of like how the the quality of weight that you have at the time
Okay.
will determine how uncomfortable you are. My reasoning is right now, like today, I weighed in at 290 this morning. I did cardio. I kind of don't feel bloated. I don't feel like I forced food down that hard today.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel pretty good. Like if you told me go throw the football outside, I probably could do it, for short bursts and stuff like that. But then there's times that I felt that I was retaining a lot of water, and like I was like huffing and puffing, just like sitting there.
Yeah.
So I think that like it's like a water retention type issue. I'm uncomfortable. The things I hate in terms of uncomfortability, being on planes, and a lot of
bet,
athletes
man.
have it. I mean, I'm sponsored by Animal, and I work for them. And I always, the inside joke is I always say, when are you going to get me a first class ticket? And they would say, fuck off. And stuff like that. None of the athletes get first class tickets. And I know that they're not going to do it, but like I'll get the aisle seat, like even go to the Olympia, and I'll be like hanging out in the aisle purposely because I don't want to lean on the guy in the middle seat.
Right.
It just, that's a tough thing. Certain cars, my wife drives she drives a Mazda 3.
Okay.
So I sat in the passenger seat, and she goes, "This is ridiculous." I'm holding on to the bar like this and stuff like that. It's just I drive an SUV, so
okay. So you got room.
More spacious. Yeah, it's a little bit more spacious. I'll never forget back in the day when I was like 290 and really fat. My one buddy, he's 5'4". He was about 265 at the time. He was a little meatball. And I was driving a Hyundai Tiburon. If you remember those little sport cars, they're like a 2-door sport car. They're really low to the ground. And we both rolled out of that car into the gym. And I remember somebody standing outside when we both got out of the car and goes, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Because it looks like a fucking clown car.
I bet.
I'm like, "Hey, you want to buy me a new car? Be my guest." But yeah, there's certain like times that I feel uncomfortable. If I don't have an appetite and I force feed the meal and I'm kind of like retaining a little bit more water, obviously I feel a little bit better in the morning than in the evening.
What kind of weight fluctuation do you see on the scale between morning and evening if you've checked?
Probably like 5 pounds.
That's
like
it. That's not much.
Yeah, it's not that much. The highest I've seen on the scale at the end of the day, I've gotten 295 at the end of the day so far this off season. I was very filled with food when I got on there. I was like waddled on there.
Okay.
So obviously that's not accurate, but it still said it on the scale. But yeah, it's just it really comes down to also like what kind of supplementation I'm doing right there in terms of what water retention goes. And like I said, I could feel that the more water retention that I have, the more out of breath that I'll get.
I could imagine, man. So, the reason that I like to do this program is to kind of share advice from a guy like yourself. You've done something at this point that most people would love to be able to do. Many people will never achieve. The reality of it. There are very few people that are going to put on the amount of muscle that you have. But I know that there's people out there that would like to, and I know that there's people out there that will. Let's start with some of the advice that you would give some of the guys out there that are younger, that are maybe like that 130-pound Gary Turner right now. What would you say? What would you suggest to them that maybe you would have done differently, or what were the things that worked? Let's hear some of the advice that you would give some of these guys.
Well, the first thing is that and one thing I hate and I preach against it is a lot of these guys will say, "Mom, my genetics don't allow for that." I said, "Oh yeah, you've tried." A lot of people immediately count themselves out. And honestly, this is not to hate on the men's physique division or the classic physique division. Yeah. If that's what the person genetically looks like or wants to look like, I understand that. I'm all for it. But a lot of people settle for those divisions because they can get there quicker. And, where if you told them, "Hey, would you ever want to look like Rolly Winkler?" A lot of people would say yes. They just know that the work and the extreme that they would have to do that is just not something that they want to do.
Yeah.
So I always say, don't count yourself out in terms of being, getting to a certain size, because easily I could have said that at 130 pounds, at 160 pounds, 210 pounds. There was a lot of stages that I went through, and I still believed. So that's the first thing I would tell them is to, if that's something you want to do, you're going to have to, you can do it. Most people, unless you have really bad genetics, but there's just probably different extremes that you're going to have to go to do that.
Right.
Another thing that I would say for them is it's going to take a long time. I started this journey in 2006. There was many stages that I was in. I looked like a men's physique guy in college. I was a bloated mess in the early 2010, 2012 time, 2014. I didn't really get my act together until 2015. So this is not something you just don't show up within a year, 2 years, and you're 300 pounds. It's just not going to work. It's not, and there's going to be a lot of people watching right here and say, well, it's drugs. I mean, they help, but it is not, that also does not make a 300-pound monster. If it's anything, it's consistency. It's consistently doing the same shit, being passionate about it, wanting to do it, and really rarely ever screwing up. I didn't have a cheat meal in Vegas.
Okay.
While I was there, that was just like a weird thing. I'm obsessive. It's what I want to do. But my diet was the same in the off season while I was in Vegas, and that's just how I did it. I eat when I'm not hungry. Last night I blended up 6 whole eggs, 5 ounces of steak, and I ate 4 slices of Ezekiel bread with grass-fed butter on it, all weighed out. There was 10 grams of grass-fed butter. I weigh everything. Yeah. This is off season, by the way. The pre-contest, I don't even leave town, so that's just a whole different ball game. But I did not want to eat that. I wanted to go to bed so badly. It was about 12:30. I just wanted to go to sleep, but I said I cannot look myself in the mirror if I don't get that meal done. I was nauseous. I blended it up. It tastes like shit. The texture was all like, not good. I got it down. I bet. And I finally went to bed. I would tell like a lot of these young guys, I'm like, they might skip out on stuff like that. They might say, well, and they might make excuses. I have it tattooed on my arm. My saying is, no excuses, do the work. It's just whatever it is. If this is what you want to do, this is going to have to be a first priority. There's other priorities that you can have as well, but when I wake up in the morning, I always say to myself, what can I do right now to be better at bodybuilding? Yeah. And I integrate everything else in my life, my wife, my kid, I integrate that all into my life. I'm not one of those people who say, well, I have to stop bodybuilding because I have to focus on business. I get up, I go to work, I commute 90 minutes to work there and back to Animal, and I still have all my meals. It's just a priority thing. It's because I want to do it. I think that a lot of the people will, young guys are afraid to go to extremes, and I don't mean with drugs. I think that's the one thing that they want to go to extremes with, and I really don't think that that's the answer. I think you're just going to hit a ceiling. You're going to stop and plateau there, and then what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to go even higher. Yeah. I think that one thing I learned is when you come off, or if you go into a cruise, you have to be able to maintain or close to it the size that you were while you were blasting up. Almost like hold on to that plateau while you get yourself healthy. Okay. Maybe for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever that cruise or off time is. Hold yourself. Your composition will change. You won't have as much pop, your legs or shoulders, but hold it. Maybe if you lose 5 pounds of water, okay. When you get back on, make sure you're ready to go. You'll blast up, and then you'll jump levels. And that's how you start moving up onto different levels. Like I said, we were saying I'm going to go into a cruise period till Thanksgiving. My target is to hold it at 290. Okay. Maybe 288 I'll give it to. Yeah. And then I know I'll be fresh, and then I should be able to blast it to 300. Wow. Yeah. That's that. Hopefully. I mean, if all goes to plan.
Sure.
But I think the first thing is a lot of these guys, they see these, smaller divisions, and they want to do it because it's easier. Easier to get into. They can get on stage quicker. Yeah. And that's why we're not seeing crazy super heavyweights at the amateur level anymore. Some heavyweights is pretty good, but there's not a lot of 5'8", 5'7" super heavyweights that we used to see, in the early 90s and stuff like that. I think really the only short super heavyweight that's making a splash right now is Nick Walker. He's shorter than I am, he I don't know what he weighed on stage, but he's close to 300 in the off season. He's enormous, and that's just a guy who's over years and years. He didn't always look like that. So I just think a lot of these guys, they want to be huge. They don't want to put the work in, or they don't want to like suffer as much. And there is suffering. I hate using that word because there are real people that are suffering in the world of disease and homelessness and stuff like that. But there's uncomfortable. They're afraid even to make themselves uncomfortable over getting the food down, and really just kind of working at a day by day basis. Where they can like, okay, we got 7 meals today. Let's get them all down. Even if it's tough to do, just get them down. Train the way you're supposed to train. I think a lot of people are kind of fed up or fed into like the Instagram type thing where they have to be lean.
Sure.
My pictures right now, I mean, that's a whole different subject, and I'll get into that right now. My pictures on Instagram, I care about my Instagram following. They don't get as much likes as when I'm in a pre-contest phase.
Sure.
When I get a pre-contest phase, I'm like 8 weeks out, and I'm looking pretty lean. But we were a lot of likes. Now it's like, what kind of poses can I put up? A side chest might look decent. A rear lat spread might look decent. But there's no abs and thighs going up right now. There's no side triceps going on. I don't want my stomach sticking out. There's some very unflattering pictures that can go out when you're this off season. However, it's all part of the game. And I think that a lot of young competitors nowadays are afraid of going towards that because they know that they're going to get less engagement on their Instagram. Sure. And that is not a longevity way of really approaching the sport, because you're going to have longer off seasons to get this. I don't want to be in off season right now. I have the itch to train to get ready for a show right now, but I know I got to give it to a little bit longer so that I'm competing in late 2020. So it's a little bit longer. As I say, hide in the shadows for a little bit longer, and then it'll all be worth it when you start stripping down.
It's like delaying the gratification is what you're talking about,
And that's like a problem with society, like as a whole, not just in bodybuilding. Instant gratification is a huge thing. They want it now. Yeah. They want it fast. And if it's not possible to get it, they'll take the next best thing that is quick. Yeah. Which, I really notice it the most in the classic division. I see probably 10 people in the world that are truly classic physiques, and the rest are skinny bodybuilders.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that could keep going and bodybuild,
blocky waist guys that are just light body weight that can make the classic height and weight requirements, but they don't have a business being there. So it's they should just wait in the off season longer. And I think that we used to see that back in the day because guys would wait from competing until it was time to do it. I think nowadays people are getting into it very soon. I think that competing is the hip thing to do. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what division it is. It's an attention thing. Whereas with me, like competing is like a life or death thing for me. So it's like, it's not an attention thing. I don't care if I ever get on stage and there's nobody there. I still will prep for it and I still will do it.
What do you mean? Tell me a little bit more about that, a life or death thing.
It's like the end of the world if I don't do what I'm expected to do. And when I mean by what I'm expected to do, I mean personally. I wrote that diet down on a damn piece of paper, and that's what it's going to happen. Okay. I have this thing, like if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I'm going to follow through on what I promise. And that's like an accountability thing that I have. Yeah. So it's, if I said I'm going to compete at the 2020 North Americans, pending that I'm not injured or dead, I'm going to be at that show. Okay. It's not like I made a promise to myself that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do the best I can to get there. And it's the same way with the daily regimen of eating, training. I don't switch. And this is like a Dorian Yates mindset. I just watched a video on it. It's a mental challenge. Yeah. If it snows, I won't switch my training day to the next day or something that's a little bit more convenient. If it was supposed to be on Wednesday, I'm going on Wednesday. Yeah. And even if Thursday's off, because it's just a thing. I can't let anything distract me from that. Is the first priority. I'm focusing on that, and that's what's going to get completed. And once I complete it, then it's checked off for the day, and then whatever the next meals are. This is the next meal, just do it. So I just feel like I don't like when people convenience themselves
Mm.
for bodybuilding. I think that when you convenience it, it means that other things are taking priority, and that's not how I handle it.
It kind of, and what it sounds like to me is, let's say it's snowing really bad Wednesday. You normally have Thursday off training. You're going to go Wednesday anyway and still take Thursday off. It sounds to me kind of like you're saying that, like, if you make this concession now with this situation, it makes it that much easier to kind of like cave on the next one, is what you're saying.
Yes. And I have a like mental thing where, especially during prep, if I have to do everything 100% during prep, because if things don't go the way placing wise at the show, I still look myself in the mirror and say, you did everything that you possibly could. The other guys were just better bodybuilders. That's the end of it. I've never been mad at a show unless I felt like I was completely overlooked, or I don't use the politics, and I don't think that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
But if I ever felt like, if it ever was something blatant like that, then I might get upset. But very rarely have I ever walked off stage, and if I was second call out, or if I was on the outside of the first call out where I like threw like a temper tantrum after the show, I usually had a smile on my face, because I know that I did everything that I possibly could, to do that. It's making like these, like, I'm not trying to make a deal with myself to make my life easier. I remember in 2012, I was in prep for the Atlantic States in New Jersey, or it was in New York at the time. And it was my sister-in-law's, I wasn't married yet, but it was my sister-in-law's wedding.
Okay.
It was a Saturday. I was on diet. I trained in the morning, and I didn't ask my coach for a meal at the wedding. However, Sunday was a full cheat day.
Okay.
Meaning at the time, it was early on. It was like 15 weeks out. And I had a full cheat day on Sunday. I didn't ask him to switch the cheat day to the Saturday so I could eat whatever at the wedding. So I still brought my meals, trained. I was in the car in the valet line, because I asked the valet for the key, and I was eating cold sweet potatoes in the back of the car outside the wedding until my father-in-law said, bring the food in here. We paid enough money for this venue. You can heat it up.
Yeah.
And then you can. I didn't want to eat at the table, and then the next day came, and I think I was at McDonald's breakfast.
Okay.
So it was just a principle of it.
Yeah.
That the cheat day was scheduled on Sunday, not Saturday.
Okay.
Stop trying to make everything fit in your life. That was what like I said, I'm weird. I'm sure that there's people that are watching this that may say that makes absolutely no sense. There's no balance. It's just my thing. I'm like a nut.
No, so I get it. I get where you're coming from. Do you think that there are some other people that, are you saying that, do you think that there are people that can not do it that way and still be successful? What are your thoughts there? Because I feel like that's something I've wrestled with, in my own bodybuilding when I had been, really focused, is that, I hadn't made those concessions, and sometimes I almost wonder now, like, hey, maybe, and I look at other people I know that had gotten burnt out after doing that for a decade or whatever. And it's like, maybe had I not done that, maybe things would have been different. What do you think about that? Just like overall with just everybody? Because it sounds like you're just saying, what I'm getting from you is you're telling me that, like, it doesn't have to be that way, but maybe it does for you personally.
Right. And that's exactly right. I've always wrestled with the idea of, I've always known early on that I was not genetically gifted in terms of shape, everything really. I was not some kind of favorite to rise up or anything like that. And I realized that really quickly. So I always tried to overcome that with work ethic, being almost borderline obsessive and neurotic. Whereas I always tried to figure out, was I like that because I understood that I wasn't as blessed as somebody else, and other guys that are genetically blessed know that they can get away with it. So they establish that with themselves early on, that they can get away with it because they're still winning shows. They still have a beautiful physique. So it's like, I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, kind of with that. So I know there's guys that are drinking, regular soda up until the show. It's just like, there's a couple of genetic freaks. Michael Lockett comes to mind. There's just doing crazy stuff leading up to the thing. And I identify with none of that. Yeah. If and I can get it that they can do that. I'd like to see them focus a little bit more. Because unless you're the reigning Mr. Olympia, there's more that you can improve.
Sure.
So just getting away with it, I don't think is an excuse. I think that if you're, whoever's reigning Mr. Olympia at the time, if he could get away with it, that's fine. But if you're not, there's still room to improve for you to chase that. So don't give me this. Well, I could get away with eating, cheat meals every day.
Yeah.
Well, you're not winning the whole show, so you obviously can't. So you just still make do with what you have. But I was still like kind of come up with kind of like the Dorian era. I listened to a lot of Dorian talks. How he said, it's kind of like a chip on your shoulder, the shadow thing. I'm not as hidden as Dorian was.
Yeah.
Like he would hide away. I'm not like that. I'm a little bit obviously on Instagram. I'm a little bit more flashy. I wear tank tops in the gym. But Dorian had a quote that he said in one interview where he said it was something about he trudged through the snow into the gym, and he said all I could think about was those guys in California with their Porsches, their Ferraris. He goes, at the beach and lifting in the sun. He goes, and they're going to pay for that.
Oh, damn.
And that's kind of how I based everything off of. Whereas I don't care what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
I know that they're dieting on 800 grams of carbs. I know that I'm not.
Yeah.
I know I don't give a damn. And I kind of, sometimes it's a little bit of a badge of honor to know that I'm able to suffer.
Yeah.
I think it's in the future something I have to know to when to draw the line, because it could become detrimental. I could flatten myself out, and I do have a problem with being flat at shows.
Now, has that happened? Tell me about that, because I feel like we can that same thing. I think in bodybuilders that can help us to drive to be our best and be consistent. It can also be our undoing. Can you talk about a time where it had been your undoing?
Yeah, I worked with Matt Porter for years, and Matt was like a overly I guess neurotic guy. I would say he always wanted you super, super lean, which of course will win shows. And I always would listen. I've never deviated from any coach's direction. That's the truth, that's not a lie. And we both were both nuts. So we would overdo the diet, and I was always peeled, but I was always a little bit flat.
Okay.
My body happens to be not the kind of body that looks that good when it's stringy and flat, even though it's peeled to the bone.
Okay.
So I think that there was a few times where I was overly neurotic towards training daily. I used to train daily, 7 days a week through the whole prep. I think I lifted weights 107 days in a row for the 2017. And looking back, I was peeled. I was flat. I won the shows because they were, I took first in one show, second in a regional, up in Northeast NPC show. However, if I had taken 1 day off a week when I was tired and just reset the physique, I bet it would be a much crazier physique.
Interesting.
Just to be rested. That was a time that I realized that if I pulled back just a little bit, you would have been nuttier looking. But I was on this zealous attack towards being the most peeled, and that's a maturity thing. Of course, Matt co-signed on that, but and I of course listened to it. He liked that, but I feel that the look if I had taken 1 day, 2 days off, just when I needed it, I could have rested it, and maybe everything would pop a lot more. But that was one time, like that.
It sounds the good news is it sounds like you've changed that now. It sounds like you're okay with taking time off. And I've been wondering that, man, because I talk to a lot of people that are they train 6 days, they train 7 days, and they're they just obsessively, they can't take time away from the gym. How did you come to terms with only training? I say only training 4 days a week. It's still the majority of the week you're training, but how have you come to terms with that?
Well, I put my coach who I was dealing with, who I'm working with now, Frank Manarino. He's the one who convinced me to just try his diet.
Frank, by the way, Frank chimed in here because everybody else saw that I put the comment on the screen a little bit ago. But he says, Gary had a protein shake in his hand during my entire wedding, and he was a groomsman.
That is completely true. That is completely true. Frank was one who wrote the diet that I'm on. I'm still working with him. I check in with him every day on what's going on. And he said, listen, you're going to go, let's drop the volume down to 4 days a week. And I was resistant, of course. I was like, well, what am I supposed to do that entire time? Like, I like going to the gym. I like training. He goes, just try it. So another thing, I put the trust in him, just like I put the diet trust in him. And we went for it. And of course, very rapidly, everything started blowing up. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely some merit to this. It's definitely working. And I started to, like, I don't enjoy the off days. I do look forward to the days that I'm training.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good balance because I feel like there are days that, like, I'm like, okay, I get to go home and spend time with my family. I get to go home and have a cheat meal and relax on the couch. And then by the next day, when the next day will be a training day, I'm like ready to roll. That's all I think about.
Yeah.
I think when you go 6 days a week and on that third day, you're like, Jesus Christ, man, I got 3 more days of this. And then that's when you start going through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's when you start going through the motions. I found also, and this is another recommendation by Frank, that he felt that my recovery in terms of muscle recovery was down. You know, people say, well, my legs are down. Let's train them twice a week. Let's train quads Monday and Thursday. I noticed I used to do that for years, thinking I was trying to bring my quads up, so let's do it a lot more. Let's squat twice a week and, you know, stuff like that. And they stayed down. By that second workout, I wasn't even getting a pump.
No,
it was
kidding.
like you couldn't even find a pump.
Yeah.
And that's a recovery. That's a complete recovery issue. I don't care what you're taking, how much food you're eating. He goes, you're going to do everything on Monday for legs, quads and hamstrings. You're not going to do hamstrings on another day because it's still going to affect your quads a little bit.
Yeah.
So I do that. That workout takes a little longer because there is some, you know, downtime. I like to take a minute between each set, maybe sometimes even a little bit longer. However, I have 6 days after that till the next Monday to recover, and I notice huge leg growth. So when people say, "What would you go up in a frequency or down?" I said, for me, it was be in the gym less. You have to be intense while you're there, but do it less, and then let it rest. It just seemed to work out. You know, I see guys training back 3 times a week.
Yeah,
I'm like, dude, my back would never be able to make that, and I take a decent amount of stuff, so it's like it's still not recovering.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like, you know, what I'm getting here just from our conversation, you know, you mentioned toward the beginning, you work for Animal. You know, you're a lucky dude, you know, first of all, and I know you know that. You know, they're a great company, and they have a very specific quality of branding. And if you weren't the guy who you are, the guy who is gonna, you know, have a protein shake in his hand during the entire wedding, who's going out to the car to eat cold sweet potatoes, you might not be, you know, part of that company. I just, you know, I think that's part of it, man. Can you talk about the work that you do with the company?
Yep. It's funny you said that, because I do all the social media writing for Animal.
No kidding.
So
cool.
if you see, that's one part of my job, but I'm mainly a writer for them. And if you see anything come out of the Instagram or Facebook from Animal, 99% of the time I wrote it.
Nice.
So you see their hardcore quotes, at least recently, probably within the last year and a half. I've conceptualized them, written them out. But if you've ever gone to my Instagram, my personal Instagram, it kind of sounds like the same thing because it is me. So the thing is that there's no acting involved.
Yeah.
I think the same way as their branding, so it meshed real well that it's like one and the same type thing.
That's cool.
You know, you could have like a lot of people that can maybe act and understand the branding behind Animal and go along with the flow. But for me, I write on the same way on my Instagram about hardcore, no excuses, put your nose to the grindstone type thing. And that's really what a lot of the marketing between Animal is. You know, the guy, the unknown guy in the dark dungeon gym that, you know, is just grinding away to prove himself to the world type thing. And that's how I always felt as an athlete. So it wasn't, I never felt like a superstar or anything like that. Mm. So that's kind of the superstar mindset on a pedestal is not really the Animal way. It's more the unknown guy. So it really worked out perfectly that I ended up there because there's really no acting, and working at the companies is great because they understand that we're bodybuilders. There's a lot of bodybuilders and powerlifters in the office. It kind of, in the office dynamic, it kind of looks like TMZ for bodybuilding. So like when
Yeah.
Hadi Choopan got onto the country, everybody like walked in there and go, did you hear the news?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it immediately became a talk. I mean, you wouldn't get that working at Apple.
No, God,
You know,
no.
you could, so, you know, that's one of the good things. Of course we do work, you know, we're doing work for the company, you know, customer service, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it is cool that these guys know that whole thing. They also know if I'm starting prep, you know, they know that I'm 4 weeks out and why I'm not talking to anybody because I'm like on my deathbed. So, you know, it's not, and not everybody is a competitor, but there's a lot. And even the ones that aren't understand the culture, they're around it. So it's really, it's a perfect storm. And, you know, and it's an office type thing. So I always am thankful that the work isn't physical.
Yeah.
Some guys compete. You know, I remember Paul DeMeo was jackhammering on like a road crew before he turned pro. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because God knows what's happening. You're not going to have energy like for the gym. So all that has to come into play. Like working an office job is definitely beneficial for bodybuilding because you're not expending a lot of energy. You can eat usually whenever you want, and we do, of course, at the office. And you know, you're able to not expend yourself until the gym, you know, in the evening.
Yeah.
So it really like worked out perfect to work there.
That's cool, man. How long you been with them for now?
I was starting in May of 2013.
Okay, so it's been a little while now, and
Yeah.
and now you're competing. It looks like you said North Americans 2020 is the game plan.
That's the game plan. And that came about. I'll have to qualify before that, and I'm targeting the 2020 NJ States.
All right.
So I haven't competed at that one yet. I would love to be Mr. New Jersey.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry the same weight that it was in the 90s. In the 90s, like if you were Mr. New Jersey, it was like psycho. That New Jersey was a big competition state, you know, back in the day. So, but I still would love that title. And I believe they haven't released the schedule yet, but probably I want to say 4 weeks later would be North Americans. 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So that gives me probably another 6 months of off season. I'll probably undo about 18 weeks of prep. I like a little bit longer. I mean, I'm a little bit heavier now, and I want to make sure everything goes right. You know, I'm not that close to stage condition right now.
Sure.
So
one more question that kind of brings up for me, you know, you're talking about the way things were, you know, in the 90s with like winning the New Jersey. Same thing was here in Michigan, like the Mr. Michigan, like that was a coveted title and people would fight fiercely for it. Like it was like our Olympia basically, you know, for state level guys. Obviously, you know, the scene is different now. You know, we talked a little bit about the way that things have kind of shifted toward classic and men's physique and the guys that aren't pushing to get quite as big. You hear talk of bodybuilding dying. Do you think that bodybuilding is going to die, or do you think that there will be a resurgence of, when I say bodybuilding, I mean your mindset?
In terms of my mindset, no. I don't. I think and this is not like an arrogant pat on my back type thing, but I think it's like a rare breed type thing. I think it has to do with me kind of being like an old soul a little bit.
Okay.
Where I'm not as new school as some of like the rest of society is. I think that very few newcomers want to really do the work. They want attention. They'll do just enough work to get the attention, but they don't like, it's not an identity to them. I think it's just kind of what they're doing to be cool. This goes for bodybuilders too. This isn't just the other divisions. This is the newcoming bodybuilding. But I just feel like it's not like within their soul type thing, as weird as that might sound, where, you know, I look at it as an identity type thing. You know, my wife always says, she goes, after you retire, you're not going to be like lose your identity completely because you're more than just a bodybuilder. And I'm like, there's going to be a lot of therapy that's needed the day that I retire. But you know, we'll have to deal with that then. But I think that I don't think that bodybuilding will die in terms of numbers. I was at the Olympia. Obviously, the biggest focus was the Open, the 212. I don't think that the biggest focus of the weekend was Classic or men's physique.
Agreed.
I think that maybe the top three. But other than that, I think that most people were obviously there for the Open. They want the freaks. I think that the newcomers at the local levels, they just don't want to wait to get on stage to be a freak at the local level. We don't, back in the day, we saw freaks in the super heavyweight and heavyweight class at local level shows, and then the junior level shows. I think the junior level bodybuilding is obviously dying quickly because there's no pro card. Right. Guys are skipping over it. I'm a huge proponent of the junior level shows. I've done the Junior USAs twice. I've done the Junior Nationals twice. And the only reason that I wouldn't jump into it this year is because it's earlier in the year and I'm still going to be dieting down.
Sure.
If they had a junior North Americans, I probably would hop in that.
Yeah.
I would love to knock that one out first before going up. I think that by the time I'll be ready for North Americans, but I've never dominated a junior level show. My best placing was 5th at the 2016 Junior USAs. But I would love to knock one out. I just think that would cut into what I'm doing here as an off season because the diet would start probably around January.
Okay.
And I think it's a little too fast for me. And I just saw what the turnouts were.
Yeah.
Six guys in the heavyweights at some of these shows, even worse for a super heavyweight. Because it's just, I think that guys are just saying, well, there's no pro card. If they really wanted to boost those up, they would put pro cards at the junior for the overall, just the overall at the junior level shows. Sure. However, then you're gonna have the bodybuilding purists come out and say, now we're giving away fucking pro cards at the junior shows.
Yeah,
I get it. Listen, people say it's so much easier to get a pro card nowadays. It is easier compared to the 90s because there's more opportunity. Sure. However, it's still fucking hard.
Yeah,
I know they give away a lot for men's physique and classic. However, they also have 45 guys in the class.
Yeah,
good luck getting a call. You got to be really special to get a look at that with that many people.
Absolutely.
There's just crowds up there. So I don't think that it's so much as it's easier. It's just that it's not like Dave Palumbo missing the overall at the 96 USAs and not getting a pro card.
Right.
Like Dave Palumbo would have been pro many times over had he competed now.
Right.
Back, compared to the 90s. It's just, I think that there will always be numbers there. I think that the certain levels are down. I mean, we've seen the pro qualifiers this year. North Americans was heavily loaded with competitors for bodybuilding.
It was a great show.
It was a good show, and it was competitive. A lot of guys were out of shape. That's whole nother story. However, at least there was a lot of numbers. You still got to get a look amongst these guys.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that felt like they were overlooked. Which is, it's a good thing. I'd rather be in a show like that. I'd rather, like the last Junior Nationals I showed up to in 2018, there was 9 heavyweights. That's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
For that show. Because listen, even if I took 6th, that's not a good placing for 9th. I was pretty pissed off with that. I mean, I did everything I could, but I was not happy with that. Now, if you took 6th out of 30, that's really
a different
good.
Story. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I want to see a crowd like that.
Yeah.
For at least it's a challenge more compared to that. It's going to take some revamping, but I think it's an overall mindset of society that people just don't want to wait.
Well,
for it.
With a closing thought, I'll say that I hope that you guys out there listening, I hope that some of you prove Gary wrong. And I think that Gary would be grateful to see himself proved wrong in this too. Am I right? Prove you wrong, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be cool, man. I got all your information. We got Animal and your social media down in the show notes. So guys, definitely check that stuff out and follow Gary Turner. Gary, is there anything else, anywhere else besides Instagram and Animal that people should reach out to you?
I have a Facebook. It's Gary Turner. Mostly the best way to contact me, Instagram. It's the _real_G6. That's GSIX, and I'm on there all the time.
All right, man. Any closing thoughts on the show here?
No, it's all awesome show. Good that you had me on. Good I ran into you in the hallway of the Olympia.
Me too, man. It was fun being out there too. And I got to tell you guys, Gary you are huge as fuck, man. You're a big dude.
I'll tell you what, I appreciate that. I don't feel that way when you said that to me. I'm like I was actually having a day that I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm like asking people, and they're like, dude, you're fucking nuts. You are nuts if you think that. I'm like, like I said, I was a 130-pound, like, emo band kid back in the day, and I still mentally feel that way.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like what I look like, and I don't see what other people see. The only time I see is in pictures.
Yeah.
Is like when I'm standing next to people, then I can understand it. But like looking down at my arms and stuff like that, and like, I don't see what the outside world sees. I still look at myself as skinny. So sometimes it's a battle sometimes.
Well, here's a comparison. Unless there's like a national level bodybuilder in the gym, I'm like the bigger guy in an average gym. And standing next to Gary, I look like a swimmer. So,
you still look good though.
Well, I appreciate that, but I am literally 2/3 of your size. So that's a reality check there, man. So Gary, I really do appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely, man.
All right, guys, for another episode of Think Big Bodybuilding Media, and if you're listening to the audio, Advices Radio, this has been an episode of Huge as Fuck. In fact, the first one here on YouTube. Guys, we will see you soon. Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome. Have a good one.